After reaching Bombay, I will go to a big library and search through history books. Because it is the surest way of finding out how the present conditions of India were reached. Then, I will return to Pune and have a long talk with Rajendra Deshpande, who will help me understand what had happened.
The train stopped beyond a long tunnel. It was a small station called Sirhud. An Anglo-Indian in uniform. Anglo-Indian means related to Britain and India. An Anglo-Indian went through the train for checking permits. This is where the British Raj begins. You are going for the first time, I think?
Yes. And Khan Sahib, how will you go to Peshawar?
This train goes to the Victoria terminus. There, I will take Frontier Mail tonight.
How far does it go?
By what route? Bombay to Delhi, then to Lahore, and then Peshawar. A long journey. I'll reach Peshawar the day after tomorrow. Then, Khan Sahib talked a lot about his business, and Professor Gaitonde was a willing listener. Because, in that way, he could know about this part of India, which is very different. The train now passed through suburban rail traffic. The blue carriages of other trains carried letters, GBMR. GBMR stands for Greater Bombay Metropolitan Railway. And see the Union Jack, painted on each carriage. A gentle reminder that we are in British territory. The train stopped at its destination, Victoria Terminus. The station was neat and clean. The staff was mostly made up of Anglo-Indians, Parsis, and some British officers. On a building was written, East India House Headquarters of the East India Company. The East India Company had closed after 1857. This is what history books said. But, here it is. And not only alive, but flourishing. So history had taken a different turn before 1857. How and when had it happened? I'll find out. As he walked along Hornby Road, he found a different set of shops and buildings. There was no handloom house building. Instead, there were boots and departmental stores, offices of British banks like Lloyds, Barclays. The shops were same as there are in a street in England. He turned right along the home street and entered Forbes building.
I wish to meet Mr. Vinay Gaitonde, my son.
She searched through the telephone list and the staff list, and then through the directory of all employees of all the branches of the firm.
I am afraid I can't find anyone of the name, either here or in any of our branches. Are you sure he works here?
This was a blow. But Professor Gaitonde had expected such surprises. If he himself were dead in this world, how can his son be alive?
I never worry about where I will stay. My main concern is to make my way to the library of the Asiatic Society. I want to solve the riddle. Why is India looking different from what I knew?
He wants to know why he is seeing a different India. Means, what he, and we all know, is that East India Company had closed before 1857. But he finds the company's headquarters still standing and working. He also sees a different set of shops on the street, as if the British Raj is still there. He grabbed a lunch at a restaurant. To solve this riddle, he went to the town hall, where the library was. He entered the reading room and asked for some history books, including his own. As a historian, he had also written many books. His written 5 volumes arrived on the table. Volume 1 took the history up to the period of Ashoka. Volume 2 up to Samudragupta. Volume 3 up to Muhammad Ghori, and Volume 4 up to death of Aurangzeb. Gaitonde found that the history up to 4th volume was same as what he knew. So the twist had occurred in the 5th volume. Reading Volume 5, Kankadarpan finally found the page which showed when history had taken a different turn. That page described the Battle of Panipat. We know the battle was fought between Marathas and Afghans. Marathas were defeated, but the page showed that Marathas had won the battle. Maratha army was led by Satyashav Rao and his nephew Vishwas Rao. But the book didn't explain how Marathas won the battle. Instead, the book explained its results. Professor was reading through his book with focus. The writing style was his, but he was feeling that he was reading it for the first time. Let us see what the victory of Marathas resulted. Maratha's victory was not only a great morale booster for them, but it also established their supremacy in North India. The East India Company, which was watching their growing supremacy, temporarily closed its expansionist program. For the Peshwas,
Maratha ministers.
For the Peshwas, the result was an increase in the influence of Bhasaheb and Vishwasrao, who became the king. This new Maratha ruler, Vishwasrao, and his brother Madhavrao, combined political intelligence and expanded their influence all over India. The East India Company was left with influence in only some cities, like Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. For some reasons, the Peshwas kept the Mughal rule alive in Delhi. The Peshwas were smart enough to recognize the importance of the technological age. They began setting up their own centers of science and technology. Here, the East India Company saw this as an opportunity to extend its influence. The company offered experts for the centers, but they were accepted only to make the centers sufficient. The 20th century brought further changes. India moved towards democracy. By then, the Peshwas lost their influence, as they were replaced by elected bodies. But the Mughal Sultanate of Delhi survived this change, because it had no influence. The Shahanshah of Delhi was just a person to rubber stamp the orders made by the parliament. As he read on, Professor began to appreciate the India he had seen.
It was a country that had not been subjected to slavery for the Britishers. It had learned to stand on its feet and knew what self-respect was. For some reasons, it had allowed the British to retain Bombay as the outpost of the country. That deal was to expire in 2001, according to a treaty of 1908. But my investigations are not complete. The page of my book only told that Marathas won, and the results of their victory. But how did Marathas win the battle? Because what I knew is that Afghans had won. So I must look into the articles, which explained the battle.
He searched books and articles, and he found a book that gave the clue. Pasahib Banshi Bakar.
Although I hardly rely on Bakar,